Who betrayed Elvis? The discovery he never got over. May 11th, 1969, 2 a.m., Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis Aaron Presley walks through the empty corridors of his mansion, his footsteps echoing on the cold marble, the silence broken only by the heavy breathing of a man carrying the weight of an empire on his shoulders and an indescribable pain in his chest. In his hands, he holds a yellowed envelope, the edges crumpled by the force of his trembling fingers. Inside that envelope, photographs. Photographs that destroy 20 years of trust, that shatter the image of loyalty he had built around the people closest to him. He stops before an old mirror in the hallway, watches his own reflection, his eyes swollen, the tired face of a man who at 42 looks like he has lived 80. A tear slowly slides down his cheek, and he whispers to himself, so low he can barely be heard, "How could I have been so blind?" But the truth is that betrayal never announces when it will arrive, it simply explodes at the moment you least expect it. And when that happens to someone who trusted too much, who loved too much, who gave too much, the whole world collapses in a matter of seconds. And on that dawn, the world of Elvis Presley collapsed in a way that not even the millions of fans around the planet could imagine. What was in those photographs? Who had betrayed the King of Rock? And why would this discovery change not only his life, but also the course of music history forever? You are about to discover one of the most painful, most human, and most real stories behind the greatest icon of pop culture. A story about broken trust, about the price of fame, about what happens when those you love become those who hurt you the most. But before we continue, I need to tell you one thing. Here on this channel, we don't just tell stories to entertain. We tell stories to remind you that behind every famous name, every title, every fortune, there is a human being who cries, who suffers, who errs, who loves, and who often faces invisible battles that no one sees. If you believe that these stories deserve to be told, that these lives deserve to be remembered with truth and respect, then subscribe to the channel now, hit the notification bell, and be part of this community that believes in the power of real stories. Because what you are about to hear is not just about Elvis, it's about you, about me, about all of us who have trusted someone and been betrayed, about all of us who have built something with love and watched it all fall apart. Now let's go back in time. Let's go back to the beginning to understand how we arrived at that August dawn of 1977.
January 1935, Tupelo, Mississippi. A baby is born in a two-room wooden house, so small that it barely fits the old patched furniture. Gladys Presley holds her son in her arms, her eyes full of tears, not only of joy, but of pain. Because Elvis did not come into the world alone. He had a twin brother, Jesse Garin, who was stillborn 35 minutes earlier. The mother looks at the surviving son and makes a silent promise to protect him with all her might, to love him for two, never to let him feel alone in this cruel world. And she fulfills this promise with a devotion that borders on obsession. Elvis grows up glued to his mother. They sleep in the same bed until he is almost a teenager. She accompanies him to the school gate every day. She is the first person he looks for when he comes home. Vernon, the father, is an absent man, a man who tries and fails, who goes in and out of jail for petty crimes, who cannot hold a job, who lets the family go hungry more times than he would like to admit. But Gladys never gives up. She works sewing clothes for neighbors, washing clothes for rich families, doing anything to put food on the table. And Elvis sees all this. He sees his mother age prematurely. He sees her calloused hands. He sees the tiredness in her eyes. And he makes another silent promise, this time to himself. One day, Mama, I will give you everything. One day you won't have to work ever again. One day I will buy you a big house, with rooms to spare, with gardens, with everything you deserve. But the years pass and the poverty continues. They moved to Memphis in 1948 to a housing project called Lauderdale Courts, where they share a tiny apartment with other families. Elvis is 13 and is a shy boy, odd by his colleagues' standards. He wears different clothes, lets his hair grow longer, likes to sing gospel in church. The other boys mock him, call him effeminate, strange. He comes home heartbroken, but Gladys is always there, waiting with a hug and the right words. "You are special, baby. They don't understand now, but one day they will understand. You were born for something great." And she was right, although neither of them could imagine how great it would be.
1953. Elvis, now 18, walks into the Memphis recording service for the first time, a small studio on Union Avenue that offers home recordings for $4. He wants to record a song for his mother, "My Happiness," a romantic ballad he thinks she will like. Sam Phillips, the studio owner, happens to be there that day. He hears that skinny, nervous kid with a huge pompadour and a voice unlike anything he has ever heard. It is not a technically perfect voice, but there is something there, something raw, something honest, something that stirs the emotions of the listener. Sam jots down Elvis's name and phone number in an old notebook. Months later, he calls the young man and asks him to return to the studio. He wants to test something, wants to see what he is capable of. Elvis arrives accompanied by Scotty Moore on guitar and Bill Black on bass. They spend hours trying to record something that works, but nothing comes out as it should. The songs sound generic, lifeless. Sam is almost giving up when, during a break, Elvis picks up the guitar and starts messing around with "That's All Right, Mama," an old blues song by Arthur Crudup. He sings it fast, with energy, swaying his body without realizing it, totally immersed in the music. Scotty and Bill jump into the rhythm, and suddenly, right there, in that accidental moment, something completely new is born. Sam runs to the sound booth and shouts, "What are you doing? Do it again exactly like that." And just like that, without planning, without strategy, rock and roll is born. The music plays on local radio a few days later, and the phones don't stop ringing. People want to know who this singer is, where he came from, when he will play live. Elvis can barely believe it. He runs home, grabs his mother in his arms, and spins her around the kitchen. "Mama, they played my song on the radio! They played my song!" Gladys cries, laughs, hugs her son so tightly she can barely breathe. "I always knew, baby. I always knew."
The following months are a hurricane. Elvis begins playing small shows across the southern United States, in clubs, at fairs, anywhere that will have him. The girls scream, faint, tear their own clothes when he gyrates his hips on stage. The parents are horrified. The newspapers call his performance indecent, sinful, a threat to American youth. But the more they criticize him, the more he grows. In 1955, Colonel Tom Parker enters Elvis's life. Parker is an experienced manager, a man who built the careers of country artists, a man who knows how to turn talent into money. He sees in Elvis not just a singer, but a product, a brand, an empire waiting to be built. He convinces Vernon and Gladys that he can take their son to the top, and they, simple people who never truly understood the entertainment world, trust him. They sign a contract that gives Parker total control over Elvis's career, including 50% of all earnings. 50%, something that would later be revealed as one of the worst deals in music history. But at that moment, Elvis doesn't care about money. He cares about realizing the dream, about making his mother proud, about proving all those who mocked him right. Parker quickly sells Elvis's contract to RCA Records for $35,000, a fortune at the time. In early 1956, Elvis records Heartbreak Hotel, and the song goes straight to #1 on the charts. He appears on The Ed Sullivan Show, watched by 60 million people, although the cameras can only film him from the waist up because of his obscene movements. But it doesn't matter. The entire country is talking about him. He is no longer just a singer. He is a phenomenon. He is a revolution. And the money starts pouring in. Lots of money. Elvis buys a house for his parents. Not just any house, but a mansion, Graceland, in Memphis. 14 acres of land, 23 rooms, a living room with stained glass windows, immense gardens. Gladys walks through the rooms with tears in her eyes, touching the walls as if she can't believe it's real. You did it, baby. You really did it. But along with the success comes the pressure. Elvis shoots films in Hollywood, one after another, most of them forgettable, made just to generate quick profit. He records albums, goes on tours, takes photos, gives interviews, smiles for the cameras, waves to the fans. He barely has time to breathe, to think, to be just Elvis, the boy from Tupelo who liked to sing gospel. And around him, a group begins to form that will be known as the Memphis Mafia. Cousins, childhood friends, acquaintances whom Elvis employs and keeps close constantly. Red West, Sonny West, Joe Esposito, Lamar Fike, Jerry Schilling, Charlie Hodge. They are his bodyguards, his assistants, his confidants, his companions for late nights. Elvis doesn't like to be alone, never has since he was a child, so he fills Graceland with people, pays them to always be available, always nearby, always loyal. And they seem to be. They call him boss, do everything he asks, laugh at his jokes, agree with his opinions. Elvis trusts him blindly, because for him, loyalty is everything. He grew up poor, grew up knowing that family and friends are the only things that truly matter. Money comes and goes, but people, the right people, stay. Or at least, that's what he believes.
1967. Elvis marries Priscilla Beaulieu, a young woman he met while serving in the army in Germany. She was only 14 when they met, and the relationship was controversial from the start. But Elvis brought her to the United States, and they built a life together. In 1968, Lisa Marie is born, Elvis's only child, and for the first time in years, he feels he might be able to have something close to normality. But the truth is, his life is increasingly out of control. The music career has stagnated, the Hollywood films stopped being profitable, the new generation of youth is more interested in the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the protests against the Vietnam War. Elvis seems like a relic of the 50s, a symbol of a time gone by. He feels this, and insecurity begins to gnaw inside. Then, in December 1968, something magical happens. The TV special Elvis, broadcast on NBC. Parker initially wanted a safe commercial Christmas show, but director Steve Binder convinces Elvis to do something different, something bold, something real. Elvis appears in a small studio, dressed in black leather with a guitar in hand, surrounded by an intimate audience, and simply sings. No tricks, no script, just him, the music, and the raw emotion that had always been there. And America rediscovers Elvis Presley. The special is one of the most watched programs of the year, and suddenly, the King is back. He returns to Las Vegas, begins a residency at the International Hotel that becomes legendary. Night after night, he goes on stage, sweaty, energized, connected with the audience in a way he hadn't felt for years. He sings Suspicious Minds, In the Ghetto, Kentucky Rain, songs with substance, with emotion. The shows are spectacular, and Elvis is happy. Or at least, he seems to be. But behind the curtains, the truth is very different. The marriage to Priscilla is crumbling. She feels suffocated, controlled, infantilized. Elvis wants her to be a traditional wife, to stay home, to take care of Lisa Marie, to wait for him while he travels for months on end. But she is no longer the 14-year-old girl he met. She is a woman with her own desires, her own dreams. They have been sleeping in separate rooms for years. Sex has practically disappeared from the relationship, and communication is reduced to polite formalities. In 1972, Priscilla leaves Elvis. She gets involved with Mike Stone, a karate instructor, and when he finds out, something inside him breaks. Not just his pride, but his trust. How could she? How could she betray the King? He who gave her everything, a life of luxury, a daughter, a last name that opened every door.
But the truth he doesn't want to admit is that he never truly gave her what she needed most: presence, attention, respect as an equal. The divorce is finalized in 1973, and Elvis enters a downward spiral. He begins taking more medications, initially prescribed by doctors to deal with anxiety, insomnia, chronic back pain, but soon he's taking pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to have energy on stage, pills to relax afterward. Dozens of pills a day, supplied by doctors who lack the courage or interest to say no to the man who pays so well. He gains weight, loses weight, gains weight again. He starts forgetting lyrics on stage, stumbling over words, looking confused. The shows, which were once 2-hour spectacles of pure energy, are now unpredictable. Some nights he's brilliant, other nights he can barely finish the songs. And around him, the Memphis Mafia continues. They're there, always there. At the shows, in the mansion, on the trips, in the hotel rooms. Red and Sonny West, the cousins Elvis has known since childhood. Joe Esposito, who manages the day-to-day. Lamar Fike, the fat funny friend who always has a joke ready. Charlie Hodge, who hands Elvis tissues on stage during shows. Jerry Schilling, perhaps the most sensitive of the group. They live off Elvis's generosity, earn generous salaries, drive cars he buys, live in houses he pays for, receive expensive gifts on birthdays and at Christmas. Elvis likes to give, always has. He buys Cadillacs for strangers, pays for surgeries for fans who need them, donates thousands of dollars to charities. Generosity is his love language. It's how he shows he cares. It's how he keeps people close. But in 1976, something begins to change. Elvis starts noticing small things. Conversations that stop when he enters the room. Glances exchanged between members of the group. A strange atmosphere, a tension that wasn't there before. He asks Joe if everything is okay. And Joe says yes, everything is great, that he is imagining things. But Elvis is not imagining. His instinct, that instinct that guided him since the days of poverty in Tupelo, is screaming that something is wrong. He starts paying more attention, listening to conversations behind doors, noticing when someone hangs up the phone too quickly when he approaches. And then, in July 1977, a month before that fateful dawn at Graceland, a book is published. The title is Elvis, What Happened? Written by Red West, Sonny West, and Dave Hebler, 3 members of the Memphis Mafia whom Elvis had fired a year earlier in a cost-cutting attempt suggested by Colonel Parker. The book is devastating. Page after page, they describe Elvis's private life in intimate detail. His addiction to medication, the women, the nights of paranoia, the shameful episodes that everyone had sworn never to reveal. They claim they are doing it out of concern, that they want to help Elvis realize he needs help. But the truth is obvious to anyone reading. They are doing it for money, for revenge, out of resentment. Elvis finds out about the book even before it hits bookstores. Someone shows him an advance copy, and he reads everything, every word, every betrayal printed on paper. He cannot believe it. Red and Sonny. Red, who had been with him since high school. Sonny, the cousin he considered a brother. How could they? How could they take 20 years of friendship, of loyalty, of love, and turn it all into merchandise, selling his most intimate secrets for the whole world to read? He stays locked in his room for days, refusing to talk to anyone, refusing to eat, just reading and rereading the book, every betrayal burning deeper into his soul. Priscilla betrayed his heart, but he could understand that somehow. Marriages end, people fall in love with others. It's painful, but it's human. But this is different. This is a violation of something sacred, something that for Elvis was always non-negotiable.
the loyalty between brothers, the trust among those who grew up together, starved together, conquered the world together.
But the worst was yet to come, because Red and Sonny's book was not the only betrayal. There was something more, something Elvis still didn't know, but was about to discover. And this discovery would be the final straw, the one that would break not only his heart, but also his will to continue. In the weeks following the book's publication, Elvis begins receiving anonymous calls. Someone wants to tell him something, someone who claims to have information he needs to know. Initially, Elvis ignores them. He is already dealing with enough betrayal. He doesn't need more paranoia. But the calls continue, always from payphones, always from a muffled voice that refuses to give a name. Until one night, the person finally says, "Mr. Presley, I worked in your company's accounting department for 3 years. I was recently fired, and I think you deserve to know the truth about what is happening with your money. If you want proof, I can give you proof." Elvis hesitates, but something in him, that instinct again, tells him to listen. He sets up a discreet meeting in an empty restaurant late at night. The woman arrives with a box full of documents, photocopies of contracts, bank statements, invoices. And she begins to explain, methodically, calmly, how for years members of the Memphis Mafia have been embezzling money from him. Small amounts at first, so small no one would notice. $50 here, $100 there. But over time, they got bolder. Fake contracts with suppliers where they received secret commissions, inflated travel and event expenses, sales of Elvis merchandise where part of the profit went into their personal bank accounts. And the worst of all, stories leaked to tabloids, photographs sold to magazines, intimate information negotiated for thousands of dollars. It wasn't just Red and Sonny. It was several of them working together for years while smiling at Elvis, while calling him boss, while feigning loyalty. Elvis listens to everything in silence, his face impassive, but inside, something is dying. The woman shows him a particularly painful document, a series of photographs that were taken inside Graceland, private moments, vulnerable moments, sold to a magazine for $5,000. The photographs show Elvis alone, depressed, taking medication in moments he would never want anyone to see. And the signature on the bank transfer belongs to someone very close, someone he trusted completely. Joe Esposito. No, not Joe. Joe was different. Joe was loyal. Joe was the person who took care of everything, who solved problems, who was there in all the important moments. But the evidence is there, in black and white, undeniable. Elvis takes the documents, thanks the woman with a silent nod of his head, and leaves the restaurant. He drives for hours through the empty streets of Memphis, with no destination, just driving, trying to process, trying to understand how his life reached this point. He who grew up poor but surrounded by genuine love. He who conquered everything, millions of dollars, worldwide fame, the respect of presidents and kings. And in the end, he is alone, betrayed by those he loved most, surrounded by vampires who sucked not only his money, but also his capacity to trust, to love, to believe in something pure.
And this is how we arrive at that dawn of August 16, 1977. Elvis returns to Graceland with the yellowed envelope full of evidence. He goes up to the second floor, where his private quarters are. He locks the door, calls Linda Thompson, one of the few people he still minimally trusts, and says only, "I'm tired, Linda. I'm so tired." She tries to talk to him, tries to calm him down, but he hangs up the phone. He looks at the bedroom walls, covered with photographs of happy moments. Elvis with his mother, Elvis with his friends, Elvis on stage smiling,
Everything seems like a lie now. Everything seems like a performance. No one ever truly loved him for who he was, only for what he could give, for what he could do for them. He opens the envelope once more, spreads the photographs and documents on the massive bed, and just stares, in silence, for hours. Dawn begins to break outside, but he doesn't even notice. And then, something happens. Something no one expected, that no one could predict. The bedroom door opens, even though he is sure he locked it. He turns around, startled, ready to yell, but stops. Because there in the doorway is a figure he hasn't seen for almost 20 years. Gladys, his mother. She is exactly as he remembers, the simple dress, the apron, her hair tied in a bun, the gentle smile on her lips. But it's impossible. Gladys died in 1958 of a heart attack at 46 years old. Elvis was with her when she passed away, held her hand, begged her to stay, promised he would take better care of her, that he would stop traveling so much, that he would spend more time at home. But it was too late. And her death destroyed him in a way he never truly overcame. His entire life afterward was an attempt to honor her memory, to make her proud wherever she was. And now she is there, in the doorway, smiling at him, as she used to when he was a child and came home heartbroken because the other boys had mocked him. Elvis cannot move, cannot speak, only stares, his eyes filled with tears. And then she speaks. The voice is exactly as he remembers. Soft, loving, laden with a southern accent. "My baby boy, look what they've done to you." She walks to the bed, sits on the edge, picks up one of the photographs, looks at it sadly. "They don't know, baby. They don't know the price you paid. They don't know how many nights you cried alone. They don't know that behind the king, it was always just a boy from Tupelo who wanted to be truly loved." Elvis breaks down. He falls to his knees beside the bed, buries his face in his hands and cries as he hasn't cried since childhood. He cries for the mother he lost, for the wife who left him, for the friends who betrayed him, for the life that looked so bright from the outside but was so empty inside. "I tried, Mama. I tried so hard. I gave them everything. I bought houses, cars. I paid for weddings, hospitals. I gave them jobs, opportunities. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to have someone real by my side. Why is that so hard? Why do people only want me for what I can give?" Gladys extends her hand, touches his face, and Elvis feels the warmth of her palm on his cheek. Real, tangible, impossible, but true. "Because you forgot, baby. You forgot who you are. You are not Elvis Presley, the king of rock. You are Elvis Aaron Presley, the boy who sang gospel in church, the boy who dreamed big but had his feet on the ground, the boy who knew that what matters is not how much you have, but how much you truly love and are loved." She stands up, walks to the window, looks out at the Graceland garden below. "You built an empire, baby, but you built it on sand. The people around you didn't come for love, they came for interest. And you let them, because you were so afraid of being alone that you preferred to have fake people around than no one at all. But now you know the truth, and the truth, however painful, always sets you free." Elvis wipes his tears, slowly stands up. "What do I do, Mama? How do I fix this?" She turns to him, and there is something different in her eyes now, something deep and wise that goes beyond maternal love. "You don't fix it, baby. You let it go. You forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You start over, not from scratch, because you will never lose everything you conquered within you. But you start over with wisdom, with discernment, choosing who stays and who goes. And most importantly, you go back to what always mattered, the music. Not the music for millions of dollars, not the music for the applause, but the music because it is the only thing that never lied to you, that never betrayed you, that was always true." She approaches him again, places both hands on his shoulders, looks deep into his eyes.
You have one last chance, Elvis. One last chance to show the world not the king, but the man. To go on stage and sing not to please, but to tell the truth. Using your voice, not just to entertain, but to touch souls, to remind people of what is important, of what is real. And then she begins to disappear, slowly, like smoke, and Elvis tries to hold her, tries to keep her there, but she is already leaving. No, Mama, don't leave me again, please. She smiles one last time, and her final words echo in the room, even after she vanishes completely. I never left you, baby. I have always been here, in your heart, in every note you sing, in every kindness you do. And I will continue to be here, waiting for you, when your time comes. But it is not your time yet, Elvis. Not yet. And then she is gone, and the room falls silent again. Only Elvis, alone with the documents scattered on the bed, and a strange feeling in his chest, something between pain and relief, between despair and hope. He looks around, almost expecting it all to have been a dream, a hallucination induced by the medicine, but the feeling of his mother's hand on his cheek is still there, warm, real, impossible to ignore. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Elvis feels something he thought he had lost forever. Clarity. He knows what he needs to do. In the following hours, Elvis acts with a determination that surprises everyone around him. He summons Joe Esposito, Charlie Hodge, and the other remaining members of the Memphis Mafia for a meeting in the dining room. They arrive nervous, feeling that something has changed, that the atmosphere is different. Elvis enters the room with the yellowed envelope in his hands, places it on the enormous mahogany table, and simply looks at each of them in silence for long seconds. I know everything, he finally says, his voice calm but firm, without anger, without hysteria, just a statement of fact. Joe tries to speak, tries to explain, but Elvis raises his hand and he stops. I don't want explanations, I don't want excuses, I just want you to understand one thing. It's over. The old life, the old dynamic, it's all over. I gave you everything I had, not just money, but trust, love, loyalty, and you took that and turned it into a commodity, sold my soul in pieces to whoever paid the most. Red and Sonny did it publicly with the book. You did it in the shadows, thinking I would never find out. He opens the envelope, spreads some of the documents on the table. The expressions of guilt on their faces say everything. But I'm not going to do what you expect. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to sue. I'm not going to seek revenge. Because my mother taught me something when I was a child. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So I'm going to do something different. I'm going to forgive. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. There are tears in Charlie's eyes, shame on Joe's face. But forgiving does not mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things will continue as they were. As of today, you are all fired. I will pay 3 months' salary to each of you, so you have time to reorganize your lives. But after that, I don't want to see you anymore. Not in Graceland, not at the shows, not in my life. I'm going to start over, and this time I'm going to choose better who stays by my side.
The silence in the room is heavy, broken only by the muffled sobs of one or two of them. Joe tries to speak again. Elvis, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I never wanted to hurt you. You're like a brother to me. Elvis looks at him with deep sadness in his eyes. If I were your real brother, Joe, you would never have done what you did. Brothers protect. They don't betray. Brothers die for each other.
They don't sell photographs of the other crying alone in his room. He stands up, walks to the door, and before leaving, turns one last time. I wish all of you luck, truly. I hope you find peace with what you did, and I hope you learn, as I am learning now, that some things in life are priceless, and when you sell those things, you lose a piece of your soul that you never get back. And he leaves, leaving them there, with the guilt, with the regret, with the consciousness of what they lost. In the following days, Elvis undergoes a silent but profound transformation. He starts reducing the medication, not all at once, because his body is already dependent, but gradually, with the help of a real doctor, not one of the doctors who always said yes to everything he asked for. He starts eating better, taking walks in the Graceland Gardens, spending more time with Lisa Marie, who visits on weekends. He reads to her, plays with her, listens about her school, her friends, her dreams. And for the first time in a long time, he is not trying to be Elvis Presley, the icon. He is just a father, just a man spending time with his daughter. And he returns to the music, but in a different way. He cancels scheduled shows, to the horror of Colonel Parker, who shouts about broken contracts and lost money, but Elvis doesn't care. He goes to the studio, not to record commercial albums full of songs chosen by executives, but to record what he wants, what he feels. He records gospel, the songs he sang with his mother as a child. He records blues, the roots of the rock and roll he helped create. He records honest ballads about pain, about loss, about redemption. And there is something different in these recordings, something that hasn't been present for years. Authenticity. You can hear it in his voice, no longer inflated and exaggerated to impress, but raw, vulnerable, real. You can hear a man who went through hell and came back, not unscathed, but wiser. Parker becomes furious, threatens to sue, threatens to terminate the contract, and Elvis simply says, "Then terminate it. I've lived too long doing what you wanted, singing what you commanded, smiling when you demanded. Now I'm going to do things my way, and if that means earning less money, so be it. I have enough money for 3 lifetimes. What I don't have is enough time to waste doing things that mean nothing." It is an Elvis that Parker doesn't recognize, an Elvis who finally found his backbone, his voice, not just as a singer, but as a man. And perhaps for the first time in their careers together, Parker realizes he no longer has total control, that something fundamental has changed.
In October 1977, 3 months after that transformative dawn, Elvis announces a special show in Memphis, in the city where it all began. It won't be in Las Vegas, it won't be in some huge stadium across the country, but at the Ellis Auditorium, a theater with a capacity for only 2,000 people. Tickets sell out in minutes. People queue in the rain, camp outside, praying to get in, because the rumors are already circulating. Elvis has changed. Something has happened to him. This show is going to be different from anything he has ever done. The night of the show arrives, and the theater is packed, vibrant with anticipation. The lights dim, and unlike previous shows with huge bands and exaggerated backing vocals, Elvis walks onto the stage alone, just him and an acoustic guitar. The silence is absolute. You could hear a pin drop. He sits on a simple stool, adjusts the microphone, and looks at the audience with eyes that have seen a lot, that carry stories no one there can completely imagine. "Good evening, Memphis," he says, and his voice is soft, without the usual performative grandeur. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I almost gave up on myself." There is an emotional silence in the audience, and then he begins to play. The first song is "That's All Right, Mama," the song that changed everything in 1954. But he plays it slowly, almost like a ballad, and sings the words as if he were discovering their meaning for the first time. And then he stops, in the middle of the song, and begins to speak. "You know, I recorded this song 23 years ago in a small studio a few miles from here. I was just a boy, scared, with big dreams, and no idea what I was doing. And somehow, you believed in me. Somehow, you took that boy and turned him into what I am today.
And I spent a lot of time grateful for that, but also a lot of time scared of it, because when people put you on a pedestal, you live in constant fear of falling. He continues playing softly as he speaks, the guitar creating a melodic background for his words. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I trusted the wrong people. I let success change who I was deep down. I forgot where I came from. I forgot the values my mother taught me. And recently, I paid the price for that. I was betrayed by people I loved. I was used by people I trusted. I was sold in pieces to tabloids and magazines. You can feel the tension in the audience, the uncomfort of hearing an icon admit such raw vulnerability. But you know what I learned? I learned that the only betrayal that truly matters is when you betray yourself, when you stop being true, when you pretend to be something you're not just to please others, when you sell your soul in exchange for applause. And I did that for years without even realizing it. But I'm not going to do it anymore. He raises his eyes, and there are tears running down his face, but he doesn't try to hide them. So tonight, I'm not going to be the king of rock and roll. I'm not going to be Elvis Presley, the icon, the legend, the guy with the hip movements and the flashy clothes. Tonight, I'm just going to be Elvis, the boy from Tupelo who loves music, who loves you, who wants to share something real, something true. And he begins to sing again, and the music that comes out of him is unlike anything the audience has ever heard. He sings "How Great Thou Art," a gospel hymn he always loved, but sings it with a devotion, with a faith, with a total surrender that makes even the non-religious in the audience feel something transcendent. He sings "Hurt," a Johnny Cash song about regret and redemption, and every word sounds like a personal confession. He sings "Bridge Over Troubled Water," and when he reaches the chorus, his voice soars in a way no one thought possible anymore, clear, powerful, effortless, as if something inside him had been unlocked, as if finally, after years of singing out of obligation, he was singing out of necessity, out of love, out of truth. The show lasts nearly 3 hours, but seems to pass in minutes. There is no pyrotechnics, no dancers, no gimmicks. Just a man, a guitar, and stories sung and told with a brutal honesty. At the end, Elvis stands up, puts the guitar aside, and simply says, "Thank you. Thank you for reminding me who I am. Thank you for accepting me not only when I was at the top, but also now when I'm trying to find my way back. I love you, and I promise, as long as God gives me voice and strength, I will keep singing, not for fame or money, because it's the only thing I truly know how to do." The audience explodes in applause that lasts almost 10 minutes. People are crying, hugging strangers beside them, screaming his name not with the hysteria of the fans in the 50s, but with something deeper, more significant: respect, admiration, genuine love for an artist who finally showed not only his talent, but also his humanity. The reviews of the show are extraordinary. Journalists who for years had written about Elvis's decline, about disastrous shows and confused performances, now write with reverence about an artistic resurrection, about a man who found his voice again, just when everyone thought it was lost forever. The live album recorded that night is released 2 months later in December 1977 and goes straight to the top of the charts, not because there is a giant marketing machine pushing it, but because the people who listen feel something, recognize something real, something that was missing not only in Elvis's music, but in music in general at that time: authenticity. And Elvis continues. He does more shows, always in smaller theaters, always in an intimate format, always with that same raw honesty. He reconnects with old friends who had drifted away over the years, not the members of the Memphis Mafia, but real people, people from Tupelo, school teachers, neighbors from Lauderdale Courts. He invites them to Graceland, not for extravagant parties, but for simple dinners, real conversations, moments of shared humanity. He starts doing charity work differently too, not just writing huge checks, but appearing personally, visiting children's hospitals, talking to war veterans, hugging people who just need to know that someone cares. And for the first time in decades, when he goes to sleep at night, he doesn't need to take a handful of pills to escape his thoughts. He lays his head on the pillow and sleeps the sleep of someone who has made peace with his past, who has learned from his mistakes, who has chosen forgiveness instead of bitterness. The relationship with Priscilla improves too, not romantically, that chapter is closed forever, but as friends, as parents sharing the love for Lisa Marie. They manage to sit in the same room without tension, manage to talk about their daughter without every sentence being loaded with unsaid resentment. And Priscilla admits, in an interview years later, "I saw Elvis change in the last years of his life. He became the man I always knew existed behind the facade, the gentle, thoughtful, deeply spiritual man who got lost somewhere in the middle of all the madness. And I was happy that he found himself again before it was too late." Because the truth is that visit from Gladys, real or imagined, was the turning point. It was the moment Elvis stopped running from the pain and started facing it, stopped surrounding himself with people who said yes to everything and started seeking people who spoke the truth, stopped singing to impress and started singing to express. And people noticed. An entire new generation of musicians began citing Elvis not as the rebellious symbol of the 50s or the exaggerated entertainer of Las Vegas, but as the mature, honest artist of the last years, the one who wasn't afraid to show his scars, his flaws, his imperfect but real humanity. Bruce Springsteen said in a 1979 interview, "Elvis, in the last 2 years, taught me more about music than all the other years of his career combined, because he stopped trying to be a legend and accepted being just a man. And paradoxically, that's what made him truly legendary." And as for the Traders, as for Red, Sonny, Joe, and the others, they went on with their lives, some more successfully than others. The book Elvis, What Happened, sold well initially, riding the wave of scandal, but was quickly forgotten when Elvis himself proved through his transformation and his renewed music that he was much more than the gossip and betrayals printed in those pages. Joe Esposito tried to reconnect years later, sending a long letter of apology, but Elvis never replied, not out of bitterness, but because he knew that some doors, once closed, must remain that way. Forgiving does not mean forgetting, and certainly does not mean giving someone another chance to hurt you in the same way. In 1982, 5 years after that transformative dawn, Elvis was in a completely different place physically, emotionally, and spiritually. He was 52 years old. He was healthy. He had recovered much of the lost physical shape. He was doing small but significant tours, and he was working on what he called the album of my life, a collection of autobiographical songs that told his story, not through gossip or sensationalism, but through the lens of music, poetry, art. The album was scheduled to be released in January 1983, and the title song was simply "The Boy from Tupelo," an epic 8-minute ballad that narrated the entire journey, from the 2-room wooden house to Graceland, from the dreams of a poor boy to fulfillment and subsequent disillusionment, from betrayal to redemption. When the first critics heard the demo tapes, the response was unanimous. It was a masterpiece, possibly the best thing Elvis had ever done. The consolidation of all the talent, all the experience, all the pain, and all the wisdom accumulated in 5 decades of life. But the album was never released. Not because Elvis gave up, not because someone stopped him, but for a much simpler and much more human reason. He decided he no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. He had made peace with himself, had reconnected with what truly mattered, had